Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Purposeful Conversations with me, Emmy, here in the Pami Code Facebook community. And I know now that we are in quarantine, lockdown, whatever you want to call it, some of our habits and some of our routines are changing at the moment. And I know that some of you, your productivity levels might be plummeting. I know that there are people who are just always on their phone or always in front of the TV and not really doing much, which is, some people will call it self-care, but others are feeling a little bit guilty about not getting any work done during this time. So today I invited a habits, productivity, and mindset coach to talk about how we can develop these new habits in time of quarantine and have that mindset shift so we can still be productive during this time. So without further ado, let's all welcome Lauren Kesseler. Hi Lauren, thanks for joining
Hi.
us.
Thanks for the nice introduction. That was very good.
Well, I'm very excited to talk to you today because we are in very weird times right now. Everyone's just at home in lockdown, and people's productivity is sort of plummeting to some extent. But before we get into that, how are you? Where are you? And how are you coping so far?
Honestly, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. So I think I probably come from a very different perspective than a lot of people. But I'm on the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. So I have a farm that I'm on. And so I'm on the farm. There's 25 acres here with wildlife and animals and all the things. So,
You are in the open air in your
yes.
farm, so not much really has changed. You can just wander
Yeah.
around in your farm.
Yeah,
How
exactly. I mean, I'm close to
wonderful.
Nashville, Tennessee, but yeah, I mean, it's a good place to be quarantined for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about developing new habits when it comes to mindset shifts and productivity in during this time when people are sort of adjusting to life in social isolation and that their productivity levels are starting to drop. What sort of initial steps do they need to take in order to make that adjustment, to make that shift if they want to adjust?
For being more productive.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is making a choice. It always starts down with the choice that you actually want to do something or get something accomplished. But once you've done that part, which is the hard part, you also need to take action on it, right? And the hardest thing right now, I think that people, at least the things that I see that people are sort of like, I'm going to say whining, because there is sort of that like whiny sort of set tone to it, really, of like, oh, my kids are home and this is happening and that, and my husband's annoying, and, all these things, right? Um, but I'm coming from the perspective that I also have two kids at home that are also going through schoolwork that I have to manage every day. And I also run a business that I have to run from home. And I have a visitor who also runs a business from home. And, so it's like, yes, everyone is in this boat together, so just kind of recognizing that like everyone is having this struggle. So but this is your life and you created it, so you can make the choice within the situation to do something differently. And it's not
Yeah.
any different than any other
It's
time, but
actually good to recognize that because yeah, so first the first step is really making a conscious choice to become more productive if that's what you want to do. Because for some people
yes,
they actually choose to use this time to be less productive, to be
which is
which is
fine.
fine, to take a step back, to spend time in reflection, maybe to reevaluate the things that they are doing in their lives. But there are those who would like to make that conscious decision to actually use this time to do something productive. So you are right. It's a matter of choice. If you choose to step back and be less productive, own it. It's like don't feel
Right.
guilty. Don't feel guilty if you choose to be less productive because you are still using that time for self-reflection, maybe for self-care. Because I think some
Yes.
people do feel guilty. But if you choose that, own it. Actually take up credit for actually choosing to do a bit of self-care and self-reflection. But if you choose to become more productive, then it has to be a conscious decision coupled with action and a little bit less whining. And with the whining bit, it's probably recognizing that these potential issues, the circumstances exist, but instead of whining about it, you can actually do something about it. You could work your way around it, because I'm the same. I always just, well, not always, for since I started my business, I've been working from home. And since the lock, not much has changed for me in terms of running my business. This is where I do my work. I go downstairs if I want to eat. I go outside if I want to have a little run. But it's not much of a difference for me in terms of my business. The difference is that my husband and my kid are now with me, and I don't
Right.
really see that as a problem. I love it. Now
Me
I have
neither.
company. You
I'm
know,
the
na,
same.
yeah, it's like it's fantastic. Some people I was like, oh, how am I gonna juggle this? And well, you can find time. You need to allocate time. You can, for me now that they are here, I go back to my previous, when I had my full time job, I would
Yeah.
wake up at 6 in the morning. From 6
Yes.
till 8, I will have my concentrated time to get on with my work.
Okay.
So by the time my kid wakes up at 8 until, let's say, 11, we do homeschooling, and then we take a nap. And then while he's napping, I'll do some work. So there are ways around it, but you are absolutely right. I've seen a lot of whining on social media as well, instead of acknowledging it as an opportunity to be together as a family and just work your way around the circumstance. There are things that we can do. So yeah, so in terms of productivity habits, how do you develop that? How does that, because for me as a psychologist, I know that it takes repetition, and yeah, as you've said, conscious decision to form habits. So how do you solidify these habits as far as productivity is concerned?
Yeah, so I think you touched on one of the first aspects of it, is that what you did yourself is one, it's just being present in the situation, so instead of constantly interacting with what your past is or the anxiety of the future, you need to look at what is happening right now, right? And what is in your world right now. That's what's happening. So the only opportunity you have to change that is in the right now. You can't change it from the past, and you can have an influence on the future, but right now you have that opportunity, right? As you say, opportunity, I say that as well.
Mm.
So once you've made that decision to be more productive, the easiest thing to do, then you have to take action, is to have some accountability in that,
Mm.
right? So one, it's making a decision, I want to do something. Two, it's, well, what do you want to do, right? Maybe, especially during this time, like I've been able to focus on things that I haven't been able to focus on because the world's been moving so fast, right? That I finally, everyone has slowed down enough that you can kind of settle in and go, you know what? Okay, yes, I'm choosing some self-reflective time, like you say, which was actually the issue I had with the productivity with a lot of my clients previous to the quarantine, was not to feel guilty about downtime, right?
Mm.
So not everyone's been given massive downtime. Okay, how to be productive? Make the choice, but then you have to choose what you want to take action on. But then you need some level of accountability, right? And I think that's where people are getting, I guess, freaked out
Mm.
about being home and the kids and all that things, is they haven't learned how to manage allocating your energy and time and then having some accountability to that, right? Because you're only accountable to
On
yourself,
yourself, yeah.
essentially,
So there's
right?
a little bit of self-discipline when it comes to accountability and when you're in social isolation, but you can still ask for accountability from others,
Yes,
right?
yes. So I actually run a habits, productivity, and mindset challenge group. And so every day I do a focused work session. So like anyone can jump on there anytime. They just hop on the link and then, you say, okay, this is what I'm going to work on today. Well, now you have someone across the camera, right?
They can see you're publicly accountable.
Yes, that you're going to sit down and do the work. And the thing is that I've been running that particular one. Before that, I ran something called the 5 Daily Disciplines, which is all about how to manage your energy so that you stay centered mentally, emotionally, physically, energetically through this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So taking those times to do those little things during the day to kind of keep you in check.
Mm-hmm.
But then, then we worked into the focus work and productivity aspect of it.
Right.
And that's all it takes. There's lots of tools out there. There's not just my group, but there's something called Focus Mate where you can just go on there and pick a time that you want to work and someone can jump on and work with you. You
And
don't know
check.
that person,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
right?
I think that's the missing step for some people, that they don't have the accountability. They will make the conscious decision to do it. They will take some action, but when someone's not looking,
Yes.
someone's not checking, it's quite easy to slip. When you
Yes.
don't have that accountability, and you have a better chance of actually succeeding and sticking to what you said you will do, when actually when you are held accountable. I've
Yes.
noticed this in one of my other groups, because apart from this psychology in your life series, I also run a self-publishing made simple community. So I have a group of authors. We have like they set their intentions every Monday, and then we also check on them on Friday, just to be sure that they did what they were supposed to do. And that accountability does help. And when you have that focus time, so I run like a 12-week get it done challenge
Yeah.
in that community. If you separate the ones who are in the challenge and those who are not, the ones in the challenge are more likely to get it done,
Yes.
because they have that structure, that 12-week limited time period that they have to get things done. So it's not like a forever kind of thing. It's
Yes.
only during that 12-week period. And with accountability and support embedded in it, they are more likely to get it done, because there's structure and accountability in there. So for me, I've seen the difference. I there are students of mine who
Yeah.
just take the course and they will leave it there for a whole year. And for
Yes.
those who take the course and have the get it done challenge, that accountability and guidance for like a 12-week structure, it actually helps them to get it done. So you're absolutely spot on. When you raise that accountability, it's like, yeah.
Yes. Well, then you
Yeah.
have someone on your side too. And the other thing too is that, you know, I think people put up this big barrier of time too that something is going to take, and there's other things that come into play as far as your habits and your energy also that affect productivity and all those sorts of things. But there's easy ways to sort of prompt yourself to do it, because the thing that I'll get from people all the time, I mean, I work with busy people, and so you hear this all the time. Well, I don't have time. I don't have time. Okay, time. You can actually stretch and compress. You have that power. Every individual has that power, right? But how do you stretch time? Well,
Mm.
by making the choice to insert time that you're forcing. So there has to take a little bit of force to add that, right? So I tell people, okay, say there's something that you want to do, right? Don't say like, oh, don't get it in your head like, okay, that's going to take me so long to do it, I don't have time now, because you'll never have time for it.
Yeah.
But if you say, okay, at least 5 minutes a day, I'm going to do something towards that thing. And it's just like, like,
You're putting in little bit all the time.
exactly. So, like there's that pebble in the water, and the water eventually overflows every time you add a pebble, or like I say, a mass, in order for a mass to move, it initially takes force. Okay, so initially you have to say that 5 minutes. Well, that 5 minutes is movement. That means that object in motion will stay in motion, right?
Mm.
Because there's movement towards it every day. And eventually, that 5 minutes, there's a really good chance that's going to turn into 10 minutes. And then that 10 minutes might turn into 20 or whatever. If you can only do your minimum commitment of 5 minutes a day, but say your max commitment is 2 hours,
Mm.
right? But then you have a ideal in that. So it's like, okay, I'm going to at least do 5 minutes. My ideal is 20. If things are amazing, I'll do 2 hours, right?
Right, right.
So that's all it takes is setting a timer, literally, tell your Alexa, I'll say, Alexa,
Time me.
yeah,
Yeah,
set a
you
timer
know
for
what?
5 minutes.
We've done something
Boom.
like that in the Get It Done challenge as well. We have like a timer, so you
Yes.
can have just this focus time to write 500 words, for example. You know, if you
Yeah.
write more, that's fantastic. But at least you know that this is the amount of time that you've allocated for it. Don't get distracted by anything else. It's just this one thing that you
Yes.
have to do, because I think for some people they try to do everything in that 1 hour, and they end up doing nothing because
Yes.
it's so scattered. I had a former colleague. His expertise was on task switching, and from his research, it turns out that when we try to multitask, we're not really multitasking.
That's right.
We're task switching,
Yes.
and it takes an awful lot of brain power to switch from one task to another. Even if you're thinking that you're eating while you're working, you are still task switching, because while you're typing whatever and then you decide, now I'm going to choose, there are milliseconds involved in it, but still you are still task switching from one task to another. So it's really best to just focus on one task, especially if you've allocated that time to do that one thing. And if you end up doing that one thing, at least it's done. And then you can
Yes.
move to the next task.
Yes. And that's what I tell everyone is that the key to those 5-minute sessions or 20-minute sessions is focus on that one thing only. Because a lot of the people I work with, procrastination is an issue. Well, procrastination is really like kind of an overwhelm of thoughts, right? And those are the same people who will say like, oh, well, I'm really great at multitasking. Like, no, you're not. No one is.
Mm,
And really, when it comes to focus, it takes 20 minutes to actually get into focus. It takes another 20 minutes really to get into the same level of focus you were in every time you're interrupted or you switch. Okay. So one of the things that I tell people to do in order to really bring themselves into flow state, you actually can trick yourself into doing it relatively easily, is really you can't actually focus for longer than 25 to 30 minutes without a break unless you're in flow state.
mm,
So most people don't realize that. So they sit down and they immediately try to force themselves into a flow-like state. And it feels very hard. Well, what's the
mm,
first thing that your brain's going to tell you to do? This is too hard. Do something else. I remember something you can do, blah, blah, blah.
mm.
Next thing you know,
Something
you're
else.
on
Yeah, you're
social media for
drifting.
35 minutes, right? Oh, this was easier. I got a dopamine hit. That was a lot easier than doing that thing, right? And so you can use those timers to actually get yourself into a more focused state where you aren't as tempted to multitask, but you actually give yourself permission to multitask, right?
Mm,
So set your first timer for 5 minutes. Say you have 2 hours that you want to do focused work. Set your first timer for 5 minutes. Then take a 5-minute break. So that first 5 minutes is really you just setting things up of what
it's
you're going to
like
work on.
warming up, right?
Yes. And it's just like exercise. Your brain isn't any different really from your body. So your brain needs the same sort of prep and warm up. So it's like those 5 minutes, you kind of get things settled. Now the next 5 minutes, you want to get your coffee or your juice or pee or whatever it is that you want to do, right? Maybe your child that's home has a question. Okay, you can address all that stuff in that 5 minutes, but that's also timed.
Mm,
Then the next timer is slightly longer. So maybe that one's 10 or 15 minutes. Now you're able to start to get into workflow a little bit different. You may start to notice that next break, 5 minutes, you might want to take it shorter, maybe only 3, 2.5, 3. Then you want to jump into a longer timer, 20 to 25 minutes. After that one, you may start to notice you don't want your breaks. So when you don't want your breaks anymore, that's when you know you're in flow state.
yeah.
So any ideas and things that you want that come up when you're initially in your timers, instead of switching, just have a notepad next to you and
Just
write it
let it
down.
flow. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good hack. I mean, I have. I think I've been practicing that without me realizing that
Yeah.
I'm warming up, because I'm a writer. Well, as an academic, I used to write a lot of stuff, and even now with my business, I still do a lot of writing, and I don't really dive into writing immediately. I watch some songs.
Yeah.
I listen to some songs on YouTube first.
Yes.
I watch a lot of Lea Salonga and Regine Velasquez, all these fantastic
Yes.
singers from the Philippines. And it just makes me feel alive whenever I listen to them. And then I get triggered and then I can start working.
Yes.
So, that's my shortcut to my flow state, I think.
That's
Because
exactly.
it's elevating my emotions, it's wakening my head, and steering my emotions as well. So, and then I'm energized, and then I'm in the flow state, when I start working. But that's like, yeah, 5 to 10 minutes of,
Yes.
just warming up and getting ready to work, and just energizing my brain and my spirit to get into that work mode next time. Inspired. It's more inspired rather than forced.
And that's
So
exactly right. And that's the same thing that happens with this. And I got to chill when you're saying this, because this is what the important thing that people need to hear, is that there's a process to actually get that energy revved up, essentially. And the same thing is with these timers that you do with the music. It's the same thing, is it actually puts yourself physiologically through the same thing that happens to a snowboarder who's getting ready to drop off a cliff. I used to be that person, right? So I'm very familiar with that as well. But it is that same thing. You have the okay, I have to start moving. I get down there. Oh, okay, all right, this is a little bit hard and scary. Okay, settle down, take a deep breath, get into whatever, and then boom, you go. And next thing you know, you're in that flow state, right? Where you're not thinking, you're just creating, you're
on it,
just
yeah.
in the energy, but you have a massive flow of energy. And this is what I tell people, that this is really about managing your energy. And it's the same thing with these timers that I notice, that after that first 5 minutes, people are like actually excited to
Yeah.
start diving into their work. It's like they almost don't even want to take that first initial break, but I'm like, no, take it, because that actually allows that breath phase, that letdown phase, in order for you to really jump in and dive into the work and actually trigger that whole flow state.
I love it. It's really giving the permission almost to, just let it flow. Don't force it, just let it flow. But
Yes.
I love your approach, because on the one hand, you're very structured.
Yeah.
I can see all the time, and, the order. But at the same time, you also talk about energy, and you talk about the flow. And there's a really good, marriage between the logic and the intuition and the energy. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
It's
Yeah.
quite unusual, because, yeah, sometimes when I talk to productivity coaches, it's very organized, it's very structured, and we rarely get to hear about, the flow state, and
Right.
just having that awareness of where you're ready, where you're actually ignited, to actually work. So I love that. So thanks for adding that into the mix. So just before we end this conversation, now that yeah, people are in lockdown, in quarantine, and if they've made that conscious decision to be more productive during this time, what do you have to say to them? How do they get started, and how do they stay in the flow?
So, getting started is just exactly what I was saying. It's like, make the choice that you want to do that. You choose at least 5 minutes during the day that you're going to commit to doing something, right? Maybe you don't even know what it is yet, but you're going to make sure that that 5 minutes you get. And then sit down and just start executing on that one thing. And what I have found is that, and have it uninterrupted. So even if you have to go into another room for 5 minutes, lock the door, whatever, so it's not interrupted, do that. But what I found is that once you do that, you're going to want to do more, right? So then you can make the commitment the next day for at least 5 minutes, but you aim for 10. And having someone to hold you accountable to that. So whether it's another friend, like, hey, let's both get our taxes done before whatever, right? Um, hey, let's both, what's something that you need to get done? Okay, me too. Let's both, jump on a call together and do it tomorrow. Like I
Mm.
said, I run that free challenge group. Anyone is welcome to jump in there. And next week, starting on Sunday, I'm getting ready to do a meditation challenge. So there's other things that people want to incorporate into their life that also contribute to productivity. But it's just making the choice to get started, set a timer, and just sit down.
Fantastic. So, make a conscious decision, make the commitment, allocate the time, set your timers, and have the accountability and
Yes,
support to actually get it done.
yes.
Fantastic. So, Lauren, if anyone would like to reach out and connect, and particularly that, your group, I think that's a really good resource and source of, source of support for those who want to be accountable. Where can they contact you and where can they find you?
So I have a website that's laurenkdoyle.com. So that's my married last name, or my former married last name, laurenkdoyle.com. And then I have the Facebook group is just look up Habits, Productivity, and Mindset Challenge, and you will find it. And it's also
Awesome.
on my, if you go to my actual page, it's there as well.
I'll put it in the description. I'll get the links from you and I'll put it in the description to make it easier for everyone. So thank you very much, Lauren. And thanks everyone for tuning in today. I hope that you found our conversation helpful. I mean, during these times, you can actually make a conscious decision. If you choose to use this time for self-reflection, maybe become less productive, that's absolutely fine, but own that choice. But if you do choose to become more productive, follow some of the strategies that Lauren shared with us today. I mean, it does take a conscious decision and commitment to do it, to allocate the time, and really important to keep yourself accountable, because as we say here in PAME, PAME means let's go together. You don't have to do it alone. You actually, it would be so much easier and so much fun if you keep yourself accountable and get that support. So that's it, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch up again next time for another purposeful conversation with me, Emmy, here in the Pamicode Facebook group. Until then, take care and bye for now. Bye. Bye bye.
Bye.